Hey everyone. Welcome to a new week, new episode of our podcast, Unscrambled Faith. Y'all, just before we even get into it, just to give y'all perspective of just show up how you are, who you are, as is, don't even matter. I just wanted to give y'all a little bit of perspective of what I'm rocking today. Yes, I have a hat on. I know I normally have my headphones on, but frankly, full transparency, I didn't feel like doing my hair this morning. Yes, I realize I don't have as much hair as I used to. Sorry, y'all. I squirreled. My earring was a little twisted. There we go. It's a little bit better. But, back to what I was talking about. So, I have a ball cap on. Yes, because I just didn't feel like styling my hair. And yes, I realized that I don't have as much hair anymore to style. But it's just the fact of the matter. So this is what I'm comfortable with. And yeah, so this is what we're rocking with. It is a little cooler outside here in South Texas, which is where I live. And it's a little cooler outside, which means that I am still able to get away with wearing all of my comfortable sweatshirts and hoodies, which I'm very excited about because I'm not a summer person. Full transparency, I'm not a summer person, and I definitely prefer wintertime. I will say this though, on a side note, that I'm not envious of my fellow friends that are in the north. I don't want snow per se, although we are supposed to get yet another freeze next week, but I love the cold weather. I'm one of those few Texans that actually do prefer, and when I say cold, I mean like a brisk mid 50s, high 50s, maybe low 60s. I know that's not for everybody. Now, one thing I did forget to do, if y'all don't know this, I'm a fragrance person. And one thing that y'all may not realize that I actually do, because I think it's the first time I'm doing it on a recording, is that I actually use the Scentsy room spray that I have literally as a body spray. So just a little fun fact for you. I like to spray it. I should actually be warming some new wax this week, but I need to change that out after this podcast. But blueberry cheesecake is where it's at. It's just FYI. But y'all, so we're in February, and before we even get started, obviously I want to show you all my earrings. So this week we're rocking the Love More. This was actually a set that I got added to my order from a small business that I recently discovered. And yeah, I was just so excited because they threw in these little freebie earrings after my purchase that I had with them. And also, because y'all know I love showing off my earrings, rest assured that going into the next couple weeks, next month, I will be rocking every pair that I ordered from this small business. And in fact, I'm not even gonna lie, I might actually create a video so I can showcase all of them all at once. But this was the pair that they threw, and it says Love More. If you can't read it, super cute. Perfect considering I'm recording this in the evening on February 14th. So, and one really fun thing, by the way, wearing these earrings honestly inspired me as far as what the next couple weeks are going to look like for February, as far as topics that we're going to chat about and talk about. I love so much that something as small but big and profound as wearing earrings that have a message on them inspired me for what I want to talk about over the next couple weeks. This is going to be a little bit different as far as this week and then going into the next 2 weeks to close out February. I love that the overall theme, I could say, will be like love, gratitude, and how that shows up in everyday life. Obviously, faith is going to be definitely tied into that as well. I love the fact that over the next couple weeks, there's going to be a little bit of like light homework. Nothing too heavy, but maybe a little key takeaway towards the end, some reflection. I can't wait to even share a little bit of like my personal stories, my memories, and with it as well. But specifically, today's topic is going to be loving more through gratitude. Now, like I said, with it being the month, with it being the earrings that I'm wearing, I mean, hello. It couldn't have happened at a better time. But I'm hoping so far that you are having a good into your week. We're going in and segueing into the weekend. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. But yeah, this week's topic and discussion that we're going to talk about today is loving more through gratitude. So Why gratitude? So why gratitude and love? How does, more importantly, how does gratitude and love, how are they deeply connected? I mean, when I personally think about gratitude and love together, I know from personal experience that they go hand in hand. I know that when I worked through seasons of my life when it's really been hard for me to find the things that I am grateful for, because it seemed like that I was having a hard time keeping my head above water. I was having a hard time not only figuring out how to love myself, but more importantly, how to love others and show it for others that maybe perhaps weren't necessarily showing me love in return. I know that because of the work that I continuously do day to day to try to find the small things that I'm grateful for, it does help me to when I'm practicing gratitude, it can help me strip back the layers that I've had around my heart. I mean, there was a point in my life when I would go from 0 to 100 in anger, when I had so many like hang-ups and just heartache and anger that it was so many layers, y'all, that was around my heart, that I wasn't open to loving myself, let alone loving anybody else. And I tossed the word love around like a hot potato. Literally, y'all. Any relationship that I was in, I was so quickly to say I love you. And it was awful because looking back on it, every time I told someone that I loved them, the person that I was dating, I didn't mean it. I thought I meant it, or it was something that they said to me, and then I felt otherwise like compelled and pressured to say it back. There's also been times where I've had loved ones in my life that have expressed to me that they love me, and because I have had past hangups and hurts toward and animosity towards them, I bitterly would in return say I love you back, but I didn't mean it, and it would make me almost like sick to my stomach actually like telling them that. And I know looking back on it, it's because I was holding on to whatever you want to call it, like past hangups, grudges, carrying baggage into my present day life. But I know that when when we find moments that were small moments, even that we're grateful for, in return, it's going to open us up to be available for love, and not only to love ourselves, but to be loved in return. And I feel like in order for us to be open to be loved by others, we absolutely, it is so imperative first and foremost to work on and look at what it perhaps looks like to love ourselves. That was something that I talked about recently with my therapist this week. That one profound moment that I had was, so I had spent, long story short, I had spent like the last week or so going to the movies, because there was a series of movies that I really liked, and a series that I'm very much into, and I knew that it was like, with my spicy brain, I knew that I wanted to attend every single movie because it is a series, and it only made sense to me to show up for every single movie. And I was so glad that I did, because I've already seen these movies in the past. So when you're viewing, when you're listening to something that's repetition, that's something that you have maybe perhaps memorized, or a show that you maybe watched when you were growing up, whatever that looks like, it brings comfort and it's a sense of safety. So I shared with her how I felt that by showing up for myself and sitting into these with these movies that I had watched at a very young age, very impressionable age, that it almost healed like my inner young self, and that I was able to almost like come full circle. And what was interesting is that I told her that I realized that it was funny because I was actually listening to a radio host on the way home one of the nights that I left the movie theater, and the specific radio host had someone young, around the same age that I was when I first started watching this movie series, right? Hopefully you're still with me. And this radio host gave this advice, and she said that to not be in such a rush to fall into love so quickly, or to be in relationships with other individuals, that it's important for our younger selves and ourselves, even present day, to work on gratitude and what it looks like to love ourselves. And I told my therapist this week, I said, wow, if younger Megan, if like 16-year-old Megan would have known what it's like, or if somebody would have stopped me then and said, I want you to work on what it looks like and what it feels like to love yourself, because I didn't love myself back then, and therefore I was looking towards other individuals to fill that void, to love me, and I didn't realize that I had this openness, this void that I was looking to fill with individuals, that I wanted somebody else to supplement that love for me, because I didn't know how to love myself. And I expected that I had higher standards, that I could actually be in relation with somebody that could openly love me enough. So I thought, so that I didn't have to look towards the areas of my life where I wasn't loving myself. Hopefully that makes sense. And I told her, I was like, wow, how one can only think about like how different my life could have played out had my 16-year-old, younger, teenage, preteen, whatever self worked on and been more present with how can I show it more for myself? How can I love myself? How differently everything else would have played out after the fact. It's just mind blowing. So that's why I want to segue into this week and talking about how loving more, how we can not only love ourselves more, but learn more about ourselves and learn to love ourselves more. If that's how because I feel like that's where I was for the longest time, and I'm still continuously working on that, on how I can love myself, how I can show gratitude toward myself. And I feel like before, what do they say? Like, you have to learn to walk before you leap, I believe. So I feel like that we have to practice gratitude in order for us to have a grasp on what it is to love ourselves. And that's where I feel like they go hand in hand, because if we focus on the small moments of like what we're grateful for, and we take it like one step at a time, then over time, step by step, the closer that we get to that, the closer that we'll be able to mend that hurt that we have in our hearts, to where we can not only learn and grow to love ourselves, but be open one day to love others and to allow love to come into our lives as well. But I feel like that, when we have a grateful heart, it creates a space for more love in our lives. I feel like that if we're working on a day-to-day basis for what we're grateful for, even in the smallest of ways, then unintentionally doing that small amount of work is going to open up a bigger space for others to, again, it'll help us to be more open to love in our lives. That's what I want to say. And, I feel like that, like, personally, when it comes to gratitude and how it changed, like, my perspective and my situations in my life, one of the things that I, like, immediately thought about when I was reflecting on, like, what I wanted to share in this podcast and, the topic at hand for this week, one of the things that actually came to mind, and I have it here beside me, is that I, for the longest time, like whenever I was younger, I definitely had a mix of not only being burnout by what I know now as my ADHD, but also I struggled a lot with being in like a dark, deep, depressive state. And I didn't know how to get out of that. And it was like, I feel like it was a mixture of both. It was definitely a mixture of not only just being mentally checked out from like the world in itself and just masking all the time, but I was just sad and miserable and deep down. But outside, I didn't allow others in, so then they didn't know that that's what was going on with me. And because I didn't know how to show up for myself, and because I didn't know what it looked like to love myself, I didn't have gratitude towards anything. And I had a mentality of like seize the day, like tomorrow's never promised. And instead of being present in like the day and being grateful for what I had in my life, I always wanted like more. And I had this void, and little did I know that it was this emptiness, this void in my heart that I had, that I was constantly feeling it and feeling it. And every time I filled it, it wasn't enough. And then I was like, I want more and I want more. But as I got older, I had an incredible experience with a friend that I made, where we were working alongside each other and preparing for a weekend where individuals were going to come to like a retreat, and we were preparing and working towards how we could serve those that were going to come to this retreat for the very first time. And one of the practices that we do in order to prepare for this women's retreat, for this incredible retreat, was coming up with creative ways of how we could bond and get to know one another more, and how we can not only, like, in that space of doing the prep work and the practice and everything to get ready for this weekend, right? No matter what that looked like, whatever we were doing. In the midst of that, it was almost moments of like, okay, how can we grow together as a team? How can we get to know one another? How can we practice gratitude and love? So that way we are actually equally yoked enough to where we're mentally and spiritually prepared for these individuals that are coming to us, that God's calling to come into this weekend, to where we can better serve them. Because obviously, you know, it's not like we were going to show up as perfect beings, but you definitely want to be in a healthier headspace, right? Whenever you're wanting to be the hands and feet of Jesus and help others that are struggling and in a dark time themselves. So with that being said, I had an awesome person, that incredibly awesome person that I got to know during this time. And she was so special, and it was really cool because this specific retreat, when we were doing the prep work, we all pulled names for one another. Everyone got a name, and what we were told to do was to come up with like a little something, not something over the top, but just a little something that we could gift to like our secret sister, basically. And at I think it was like the day before, like, we kicked off the retreat, we surprised one another with whatever it was that we came to mind that we come up with to gift like our secret person. And my secret sister ended up gifting me this book, and she was like, you know, I want you to have this. She goes, take it home with you. She was like something along the lines of like, you know, open it when you get home. I was like, okay, you know, sounds good. And so here I am thinking that it's like, cool, you know, I love, like, I had just started honestly practicing with what it looks like to journal. I'm one of those that definitely collects more journals than I write in them. If you know, you know. But she was very specific, like I said, where she was like, you know, take it home with you and open it whenever you're ready. Open it when you get home. And I liked how cryptic it was, you know, so I was like, okay, wink, wink, sounds good. So I got home that evening. I set it aside. I didn't look at it, I believe, until maybe the next day. But y'all, when I'm sharing with y'all this week, when we're talking about like gratitude and finding small moments day to day of what we're grateful for and paying it forward, and how that can help us to not only serve one another, but like show up and love one another, and more importantly, learn to what it looks like to love ourselves. So my secret sister, every day from about, I'm going to pull it to the first page. So, give me 1 second, y'all. So this was during 2016. So we're talking from, let's see, so July of 2016. So July all the way up until, I actually bookmarked the last day. So July all the way up until October. So mid-October. She about almost every single day wrote something down that she was either grateful for. She documented, maybe if she included me in her prayers, a quote, anything that came to mind that she was either grateful for, whether it was herself, a moment that she had, whatever it was, there was something that was documented every day for the course of those couple months. How incredible is that? I thought that was so special. I've never had anybody do that for me. Like the fact that she prayed over the book, that she said she brought this book in with her during her prayer time daily, and that she just journaled a little bit. And, you know, like I said, some days it was maybe like a sentence or two, other days it was like a little paragraph. But what I love so much is just how she didn't have to do that, but she chose to show up for me through gratitude and love. And that began my journey around 2016 and on of how I could do that for myself. And I remember that I ended up, so it's like halfway through the book that like was a cutoff, because that was around the time for the retreat. And she didn't ask me to do this, but I was like, you know what? There's like a whole other half of this book that's open and available. So during the retreat time, I actually picked up where she left off at. And I kind of did the same thing, but for like myself, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to read all the way through like all the entries, but I figured I'd go ahead and just share a little bit of what I wrote down for like the day that she gave me the book. So this was October 17th, 2016. So today Mary gave me this book with at the retreat, before the retreat. The retreat is this weekend, and I plan to not only continue to write in here, but I plan to bring this book with me to the retreat itself. Tonight, I lift up Mary and all of her intentions. I pray for her. When you can't, and I wrote down a little quote or a little prayer, and I said, when you can't forgive someone, pray for them. It may not change the situation, but it will change you. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. I actually have not, I think I reread through this book one or two times after the retreat weekend. And after that fact, I had stowed it away. And I'm just so glad that, gosh, what are we looking at? Like 9 years later that I still have this book. That I kept it. And honestly, I don't plan on ever getting rid of it. It makes me even more excited to read like one entry per day. I had this idea that I feel like the reason why I haven't read it in the last 9 years, at least the last 7 years, is because with my spicy brain, I've honestly, full transparency, I know this is silly, but I wanted to like start from the time that she wrote it. So like, what was that, July? And then to read it every day for that fact. But the funny thing is I think about reading it about now, like every year was at the beginning of the year. And I would tell myself, no, I'm not going to read it until July. But y'all know what? The Lord works in mysterious ways. And everything, I firmly believe, as y'all have heard me say so many times before on this podcast, that God has a plan for everything and everyone. And I feel like that it's very specific and there's a reason. And I really don't even need to know the reason. But I feel like that it's not by accident that not only am I covering these topics this month for the next 3 weeks, or the next 2 weeks, but also the fact that like God called me to find this book in my house and for me to be like, it's time for you to read it now. I don't think that's by accident. And I just think it's incredible that, like I said, that this book was given to me 9 years ago. And here we are. But I thought that was so cool. So I'm excited. I'm excited to dive into this. And I love so much now that I'm even looking at the front of the book, y'all. I love when God has like little seeds that he plants along the way in our lives, whether it's like through song, scripture, things that are given to us. I like that they're always like intertwined. And even if you're not a believer, I feel like that there are moments like this where we call them different things. We call them like God winks. We call them different things like that. But I feel like that there's little gems that show up, maybe not every day, but when we need it the most, for our loved ones and for God to let us know that he hasn't forgotten us, that he sees us, and that these things show up. I know it's not by accident that the front of this book is called Send It Up to God. I know it's not by accident that this little saying here is going to segue us into today's topic. But also like the fact that I said that I haven't opened that book in close to 7-ish years. And here we are. I just think that's so cool. But by my friend Mary opening up and sharing her experiences and her gratitude, her daily gratitude, she told me herself of her struggle and how that she wanted to do this not only for me, but she felt like she needed it more importantly for herself, and to, like I said, journal almost every day, one little thing that she was either grateful for or just something that was heavy, that was like on her mind, that she was like, I want to share this. I need to document this down, no matter what that looked like. whether it was something good that happened to her that day, or a positive quote, or a positive song that she came through, or maybe if she was not having such a great day, what was weighing heavy on her heart. And I just love so much that when she shared that with me, that I was called to continue that on. And I did finish the book out. And the second half is actually mine, which is really cool. I just love that so much. And I felt like, what better of a way for me to share that with y'all, considering the topic that we're talking about on this week's podcast. Another thing that I love so much, that how God showed up during the time that I was planning out my notes and reflecting on what I wanted to share with you guys during this week's podcast, was the song. I was listening to KSBG radio in the background, and a fairly new song for myself came on and played, so you might want to look it up. If you like, I highly encourage it. But, and I only say that because I'm huge on, I have friends that are definitely very much into like the instrumental part of music, but because I'm more of a lyricist and I love writing poetry, I love so much like leaning in on the lyrical part of the song, because that's how I can like connect with it spiritually. And so the song that was playing in the background at the same time that I was actually making notes for this podcast was not by accident. And I love that so much. So the song was When I Fall. So that's the title, and it's by Katie Nicole. I highly encourage you, like I said, to look it up, listen to it. The lyrics just really spoke to me. It was just incredible. It was so cool to have that moment as well. So if you are taking notes, or if you have your Bible readily available, if not, take notes, and you're more than welcome to look this up later on. But I wanted to apply a scripture to this specific week's podcast. So First Thessalonians, I'm glad I said that right. So First Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 through 18 says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." A lot of times, like, not all the times, but sometimes whenever I come across scripture, there are times where I find when I kind of want to like break it down a little bit more. And I feel like that this week, specifically this topic, I feel like that what better way to break it down and see how we can apply it to how gratitude and love go hand in hand. So gratitude turns what we have into enough. I want to keep me personally, I actually make notes in my Bible. So this is what I wrote down. I said, I want to keep constant prayer line open with God. And I want to remain steadfast and steady staying through what it means to be joy, and stand in being being a joyful like person. So if we're breaking down like the first part of the scripture where it says rejoice always. So rejoice always, it's not always about perfection. So when we're not working on, I don't want to say that, but when we're focused on like what we're grateful for, it's not always necessarily about perfection, but choosing joy no matter what our circumstances are. Because let's be honest, a lot of us are not going through the greatest of circumstances in our life. You could be possibly going through one of the hardest seasons, one of the hardest days, one of the hardest weeks that you've had in quite a while. But choosing joy no matter what, even if that means you're trying to keep your head above water. A lot of times what that looks like for me is, even if I'm waking up on the wrong side of the bed, when I've had everything seems to be going wrong, one thing after another. If I'm in the car, if I have my phone with me, I automatically know that I want to turn it on to a uplifting, positive music. For me, a lot of times that's listening to KSBJ radio. A lot of times I have a playlist that has like spiritual, uplifting, positive music. I have a good morning playlist. No matter what that looks like for me, I want to flip it on something like that, because I know that even if I currently don't have joy in my heart, I absolutely want to fight for joy. There's not a day that goes by that I don't want to be sitting in joy. Like, who doesn't want to be a joyful person? And a lot of times I like to say, faith it. So Faith, faith it till you make it. Even when you have moments in your life when you're not feeling happy, when you're not feeling joy, when you're like in a darker, dimmer, foggier type state, fight for joy, no matter what that looks like. Sometimes for me, it's honestly pulling up reels that make me laugh. I save the ones that make me laugh, so that way I can go back to them. Even if that means reaching out to someone that you trust and being like, hey, I'm not really feeling it. I'm having an off day. Flood my text messaging, flood my messenger, flood Instagram, DM me your favorite reels, your favorite memes. Trust me, your friends are going to show up, because that's how I show up for my friends. Because I know that I have certain friends in my life right now that are going through a season where they just don't know how to show up for me. They can't possibly, because they're having a hard time showing up for themselves. So when I'm coming through and I'm scrolling through reels and I find one that specifically reminds me of one of my good friends, trust me when I say that I'm automatically going to share it with them, because that's how I show up for my friends. Even when I don't have the words, even when I feel like that what I have to say is not going to hit, it's not going to be enough, or I know, because I know myself and I've been there before, where I have little to no energy to even read through a couple of words, let alone a sentence. And I'm just like, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. Sharing a video with them is basically saying hi. It's basically like a virtual greeting. And that's how I know that I can show up sometimes for my friends and let them know, like, hey, I see you. Hey, I was just letting you know I'm thinking about you. But not only breaking down the first part of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16, but also as we go further along and we talk about praying continually. So praying continually is living in an attitude of constant communication with God. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be, as we might picture, like on our knees by the bed or with our hands grasped, whatever that may look like. Maybe perhaps of the way that you were brought up and how you pray, or what you're seeing in your church, how you pray. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing that every single time. What that means is that you're living in an attitude of, kind of like what it said at the front of the book, where it's like, send it up to God. When something doesn't sit well with you, when something doesn't sit well in your spirit, when it irks you, no matter what that looks like, if it's somebody that cuts you off at that light, if it's somebody that you work with that's not creating the best positive work environment, if it's something that your spouse may be not doing, or something that they said, or maybe your kids are not communicating with you like you're wanting them to communicate, whatever that looks like for you today, give it up to God. Send it up to God. There's no perfect way. It doesn't have to be tied with a pretty ribbon. Just the very fact that you're thinking about it and you're like, you know what, Lord God, I'm just going through it today. Help me understand how I can show up for my kids. Help me understand how I can better serve and communicate with my spouse. I don't know how to do this. I'm struggling. How am I supposed to work with this person that they're constantly at my back? They're always by my side, riding me every single day. How can I create a positive work environment for myself where I just want to be able to show up and get through the workday? Have that conversation. Whether you're talking out loud like I just did, or mentally, rest assured that you're having that open communication with God and He hears you. It doesn't have to be this perfect, eloquently put prayer. The fact that you're just giving it away, you're sending it up to God. Because we're not created to carry these things. We're not designed to be able to have these heavy thoughts, these negative burdens heavier on our shoulders. Trust me. Been there, done that, still doing it. Like, if my shoulders are aching, y'all, if you see me like rolling my shoulders back, I hear them popping right now. If you're feeling tension in your neck, if your eyes start twitching, if your heart rate starts picking up, let me tell you, these are things that are not sitting well with you, and it's your spirit's way of telling you, skirt, not supposed to be processing this. This is not meant for me. No matter what moment that is, no matter what that looks like for you, give that up to God. Basically, for me, a lot of times, it's like, not today. Not today. And just bless and release it. And out of sight, out of mind. Because the more that we let it fester, the more that we dwell on it, the more it's going to succumb and soak into like the sponge that is our soul, our everyday being. And then it becomes one with us. And then what does that look like? What does that happen? What happens is that it festers for so long throughout our day that it not only starts taking a toll on us personally, but internally. And then, believe it or not, whether you know it or not, you're then projecting that out onto everyone else that you cross paths with. So it's like, why would we want to do that when we can easily just give it to God, bless and release it, and just keep walking, just keep moving, or like I say, keep trucking. Last but not least, give thanks in all circumstances. So not necessarily saying give thanks through all circumstances, but give thanks in the circumstance. So what does that mean? That means that God acknowledges and knows that we are going through difficult times, that we have difficult seasons. He sees you in your hurt. He sees when you are stressed. He knows that you're maybe perhaps going through a time that you just are just like, can I get a break? But all he asks for us is for us to give thanks in even those circumstances, even in the most difficult times, because he wants what's best for us. And I feel like that's where we can actually not only learn more about ourselves, but strengthen our relationship with God and begin to do a deeper work in our soul, in our being, is whenever we are fighting to find the joy through the most difficult circumstances. Because that, my friend, is when it's going to be the hardest to find. That is definitely going to be when it's the hardest to find. Tying back to what I shared with y'all earlier, whenever my friend Mary showed up for me in a way of gifting me that gratitude journal, and in return I did it for myself, that's actually something that I want to suggest for you guys to start doing for yourselves, is keeping a gratitude journal, even if it just means listing 3 things a day that you're grateful for, whether you're doing that first thing in the morning as far as what you were grateful for the previous day, or perhaps if you want to keep a journal by your bed at night and jot down real quickly before you go to sleep, what are 3 things that I'm grateful for that happened to me today? Don't overthink it. In fact, I remember there was a time in my life when, again, I was going through such a dark, pivotal time that it was so hard for me to be like, I have so much going on up here. What could I possibly write down that I'm grateful for? Because everything's going amok. But I had to focus on the things that I was really, truly overlooking. In fact, I did a post today on Facebook that pretty much asked the same thing. I said, what is one thing that you're grateful for that happened today? And I love how it was different for everybody. The most consistent one that I saw that a lot of people showed up and said was that they were so grateful and thankful that they woke up today. There's one. Grateful that I was able to witness a sunrise. 2. I'm grateful that I got to listen to my favorite song. 3. There you go. There's 3 right there. If I think about like my day today, I would say that I'm grateful that I got to sleep in. There's my 1. I'm grateful that my husband surprised me with a breakfast burrito, because breakfast is my love language. And that was my Valentine's Day gift. And I love that so much that he did that. That was a good surprise. So that's 2. Grateful for that. And I would say the 3rd thing that I'm grateful for is being able to do this podcast and challenging myself and my spiritual walk and my faith with God. I'm definitely grateful for that as well. And I'm grateful for y'all that are like hanging out with me right now and hanging out and watching this podcast and showing up for me. Even if I've never met you, just the very fact that you're watching this right now, I'm just grateful for you. And I'm grateful for the fact that you're showing up for yourself, and that you're, no matter why you're watching this, no matter what that looks like, I'm just grateful that you're here, and I'm grateful that you're living today, that you're a part of somebody's world, and that you're sharing space with me right now. And one thing that I will say too is that the more and more that I was documenting and journaling what I was grateful for, the easier it became, because there were some days where it was honestly just one thing that I was grateful for. I'm grateful for that I woke up today. Honestly, there was a lot of times when it was like that, more than none. But what I noticed is that over time, because I was doing this intentionally and it was a repetition thing, that I then was like, well, I don't want to just limit myself to 3 things that I'm grateful for. I'm listing 5 or 6. I'm listing 8, 9, 10. And then I feel like it starts with that, with like a gratitude journal, and then it can easily grow from there. I mean, you could, like I did, share it to social. One thing that you're grateful for today. I mean, obviously the possibilities are endless. Um, Another thing that you can do to work on your gratitude and to work on what it looks like and feels like to love yourself is expressing appreciation through your relationships. So, relationships, whether it's your friends, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's a family member, a mentor, even. You can do this by either sending like a thank you text, it could be a written note, or even a verbal affirmation. One of the things that I don't do often enough, but I am grateful for the time that when I do think about doing it, is my husband works anywhere between like mostly like 10-ish, 11-hour shifts. But I am grateful for the fact that he is a hard worker and that he's always constantly working to not only improve himself, be a better version of himself, but in return help others along the way, the individuals that he works with, whether they've been there for a long time or a short amount of time. I love that he's always putting his best self forward, even on the days that he may not be really feeling it. And one thing that I don't do often enough, but when I do it, I notice that it means the world to him and it makes such a difference, is just sending him a simple message, simple to me, not simple to him, obviously, of just letting him know, like, hey, I'm so proud of you. I'm grateful for all the work that you're doing. I'm so thankful of how you show up for our fur babies and for myself. And thank you for just being you. No matter what that looks like, taking the time out of your day to share with a person of how you're grateful for them, no matter what that is, no matter what that looks like. We just don't know where somebody else's mindset is. We just don't know what somebody else is going through. Because let's be honest, just like I've shared earlier, there's a lot of times when I may seem put together on the outside and like I'm good, but I'm not always good internally on the inside. And that's why I feel like it's important for us to share to others and spread the love of why we're thankful for them, why our gratitude towards those individuals. Sharing, expressing our appreciation to them, no matter who that looks like. Honestly, it could be, okay, like for example, a lot of times, like I have my groceries delivered, and I appreciate it when someone takes the time and aligns the bags along the wall and doesn't block our door, because I have to then go around through the garage all the way around to the house. It's like a whole thing. So for someone to pay attention to not only the instructions that I have, but take the time to do that means the world to me. So whenever I'm giving them a rating after they've delivered my groceries, I'm always making sure to put it in the notes. Thank you so much for, for that example would be, thank you so much for putting my bags along the wall. I'm so thankful. I hope you have a great weekend. Something as small and simple as like that, you never know how that's going to turn somebody else's day around. And I will say this, is that one of the most profound things that you can do is when you're going through the most difficult time in your life, if it's hard enough to show up for yourself, I guarantee you, because I'm speaking from personal experience, y'all, that showing up for others in return is like a double-edged sword. Because when you show up for others and you show that you're grateful for somebody else, it's going to do a work within you, whether you know it or not. You'll find out over time. Trust me when I say that. I feel like it's a lot harder for us to sometimes show up for ourselves and to work on what it means to show up and love ourselves. But if we're showing up and loving on others, it's going to do a work within you. Like I said, whether you know it at the time or not, it's just incredible, like how that's almost like this infinity symbol, and it's it's never ending. It's like it's all connected together. One of the things, again, kind of like segueing into that I feel like is something that I continuously work on a day-to-day basis, is turning my complaints into gratitude shifts. So what does that look like? So for example, instead of saying I have to do this, I get to do this. So instead of I have to show up for this podcast this week, I get to show up for this podcast this week. It doesn't have to be this long, drowned out, descriptive thing that you're telling yourself or you're saying out loud. But if you find yourself in a state of complaining through the day, how can you flip the script? So, for example, you say, Like, for example, something that, like, I sorry, babe, I'm calling you out on this one, but sometimes my husband will say, I have to go into work today. But I want to remind him, you get to work, you get to go into work today. One of the things that him and I are constantly talking about and sharing with one another is the difficult of, like, how I work from home, and it's so much harder for someone that works from home to differentiate between your work life and your personal life and create a fine line between the two. Working from home is not for everybody. And it is still, it's gotten better over the last couple of years, but it's definitely a week by week basis because it can be a struggle. So what I shared with him is that I'm glad that it's great that you get to show up to a job that has structure and that has hours that you're there for. And for the most part, you get to leave work at work and then you come home and then you have that separate life. Because for someone who works from home, especially for someone with spicy brain, it is so much more difficult putting that fine line between the two. And so that's something that I like lightheartedly will joke around and say, because he's like, I gotta go into work today. I'm like, no, you get to get into work today. You have a little bit more structure, because for me it's like an open canvas because I work for myself. So it's like I have to be my own boss. I have to show it for myself. And a lot of times I don't want to do that, but I have to do that. Or excuse me, I just said that, right? So now let me correct myself as an example. I don't have to do that. I get to show up and work for myself. There was an example in itself for y'all, so you're welcome for that. To close out this week's podcast, I'm challenging you to do one gratitude focus act of love, whether it's today or tomorrow, no matter what that looks like for you. But I want you to focus on one gratitude focus act of love today. So whether you are going to pick up that journal that you've been hoarding, because if you're watching this, you probably collect journals. Whether you are going to start your gratitude journal, or whether you reached out to somebody and you let them know just how grateful you are for them, I'm challenging you to do that today. Do one thing. And whatever it is that you decide to do, please, please, please share with me, comment on this video and let me know how it felt to do that, or what you're planning on doing. I want to know. Share it with me. Another way that you can help me out is liking this video, sharing it with someone else that maybe you're grateful for, that maybe perhaps is even going through a season of a difficult time where they're just needing a little bit more oomph in their life. And then don't forget to subscribe to this channel and this podcast. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. And don't forget, as always, to unscramble your faith and find clarity in the chaos. See y'all next week. Next week, we're going to dive in a little bit more and talk about how important it is to love more in the little moments, and how small acts can create a big love, and how we can find joy in everyday moments. Thanks, y'all. Till next time. Bye, y'all.